I'm tired. I'm tired for a lot of reasons. Certainly having a toddler and a baby in the house is part of it, but that's not really what I mean. Certainly, at least for the sake of this video, it's mostly that I'm tired of being disappointed by and frustrated or even upset with this team game after game. And at least right now, it doesn't seem like anything is going to change, at least on their end, so something then has to change on my end. And look, to be perfectly fair, some of this is on me. I'm the one that continued to believe in this team that they would get things turned around, even after a few videos ago I said that this team was bad and that expectations for them should probably change. But unfortunately, even after having said that, I didn't really put it into practice, and I continued to believe that each game would be the one that they finally got things turned around, especially over the course of this road trip where they played 3 of 4 teams that were under 500 coming into the game, and very much teams that they should have beaten if they were the team that we saw last year. As it turns out, they're very much not that team, and they are in fact just bad. So then that leaves me with a couple of options if I want things to change, which I definitely do. One would to just be stop doing videos after every game and save myself having to relive the disappointment and frustration of every individual loss to another bad team. But let's face it, I'm too stubborn to actually do that. And even if I wanted to stop making videos after each of these games, I don't think that I could stomach quitting on all of you that like watching these videos after you've already had to watch a team that seems to have quit on itself. Plus, I already made it all the way through the inaugural season where things were actually worse at this point, not a lot worse. They actually had more wins. They were 9-15-2, 26 games into that season for 20 points, where they currently sit at 8-12-6 for 22 points. Though with that having been said, they did go on to lose 10 of their next 11 games, including a 9-game losing streak. So hopefully things won't take that bad of a turn for the Kraken here over the next little bit. And even if it wasn't for all of that, there's also the fact that I am a diehard lifetime Seattle sports fan. And yeah, that's definitely something that'll toughen you up to some lean times or tough times for the teams you cheer for. After all, I made it all the way through 20 years of the Mariners not making it to the playoffs, and will still make it through all of the things that they're putting us through in this offseason already. So yeah, it's not just the Kraken. Anyway, all of that is to say that there is then just one other option, and that is to actually commit to significantly changing the expectations for this team this season. They clearly are not a playoff team, or at least they certainly haven't played like it really at all this season, other than a random game here and there, but certainly not consistently enough to believe that it's going to happen for them this year. Sure, they're still pretty much the same team that went to the playoffs last year, but we are now about a third of the way through the season, and it's clear at this point that this is not that team, at least mentally anyway. Physically, again, it pretty much is the same guys on the ice. But it's clear that this is not going to be the same year that we saw last season, and if it was going to be, this would have been the road trip to get things turned around again against 3 bad teams and a Toronto team that really hasn't been playing to their potential either. It's a road trip that coming into it, if they did want to turn things around and be the team that we expected, they probably needed to go at least 2-1-1, if not 3-1 in this road trip. Instead, they come away with a 0-3-1 record in these games, and the one overtime point they get is the one that would have been understandable if they had just lost in regulation against Toronto. So I could once again let myself get angry at this team for losing 3 games to 3 sub-500 teams on this road trip, all 3 games that they really should have won, and I would say justifiably upset by that if I had real expectations for this team this season. But since we're changing our expectations and more looking at this team as a team that is still building towards the future, and that core that's still coming up from the AHL and the junior levels as well, we can take a deep breath and not get mad at the fact that for the 5th game in a row, the Kraken have lost and also given up the first 2 goals of a game. We can just accept that that's part of the growing pains of a new franchise that is trying to build this thing from the inside and have a real structure that can have some lasting success once some of those pieces get up to the NHL level. And for what it's worth, as far as that's concerned, things are going pretty well, as the entire Kraken farm system has been fantastic so far to this point in the year. I don't necessarily know what all the wins and losses look like in the farm system, but the players that you would like to see doing well have been doing fantastic. Riker Evans has been playing fairly well, as well as Shane Wright and Ryan Winterton, who we did see those last 2 at the NHL level for at least a few games, but they've been great in Coachella Valley. Shane Wright's nearly a point per game with 8 goals and 6 assists. Meanwhile, in the WHL, the Furcus Circus is on full display, where he is 3rd in points and goals, not just in the WHL, but the entire CHL, which includes the OHL and ECHL as well, and that's no small feat with the scoring that happens in those leagues. So for Furcus, he's at nearly 2 points per game with 24 goals and 25 assists in 26 games played. And while I wouldn't necessarily expect to see him at the NHL level next season, or maybe even the season after that, depending on how I would imagine next season at the AHL level goes, it is a sign that the future is bright for this team, and at least drafting, Ron Francis has done a fantastic job. And they're certainly not the only ones either. There are plenty of other examples of this Kraken farm system being very healthy at this point, and setting up the future at the very least. Even if this season doesn't go the way we would have liked it to, the future does still look very bright. But I suppose with all that having been said, we probably should get to what the focus of this video was supposed to be, that being Seattle's game in Montreal against the Canadiens, a disappointing end to a disappointing road trip. And I guess I haven't even gotten to the intro part yet, so what's cracking, everybody, and welcome to Kraken R&R, where the Seattle Kraken fall 4-2 to the Montreal Canadiens, blowing another chance to get into the win column and break this losing streak they've been on. Sorry, there I go again with those expectations. What I meant to say was the Kraken do a fantastic job of fighting back from a 3-0 deficit to pull to within one with 2 goals late in the game and make the last at least 13-14 minutes of this game really fun to watch. And eventually Montreal does hit the empty netter, but the Kraken at least got close and almost had that first ever 3-goal comeback. So there you go, a little bit more of a positive spin on how this game went for the Kraken, and that is kind of going to be the approach that I take to these games for the most part, at least moving on through the rest of the season. And that's not to say that I'm not going to be critical of the things the Kraken do wrong here and there there probably will be a couple of games where there just aren't that many positives, like if they were to say get shut out in San Jose again like they did last year, especially against this Sharks team. But for the most part, we'll tend to focus more on the things the Kraken do well to overcome their deficiencies, and focusing too on the players that are going to be a part of this core going forward into what looks to be the actual window for this Kraken team to be at their best, which even last year we knew was going to be still a couple more years down the road as they build from within and through those drafts that they've had with Ron Francis, so far looking to be pretty good draft classes at that. And that means looking a lot at how guys like Matty Beniers, Vince Dunn, Jared McCann, even potentially Yanni Gord, or say Oliver Bjorkstrand, who's still here for another 3 years, how some of those guys are playing, guys that will likely be on this team when a lot of those younger players at the AHL level or junior levels make their way up to the NHL level and a real window opens up for the Kraken. And besides, even outside of all of that, like we mentioned quite a bit in the back half, especially of the inaugural season, it's just fun to actually have an NHL team here in Seattle that we can follow and watch game after game, even if those games don't always go the way that we would choose for them to. But to finally get to this game against the Canadiens, well, the Kraken do kind of just sleepwalk through the first 30 minutes of the game, once again failing to play a full 60 minutes, so in that way there wasn't really a lot positive to take out of the first 30 minutes of this game. And I mean, sure, the Kraken did stay with the Canadiens pretty much all game long when it came to shots on goal, but where those shots were coming from and how dangerous or wide open those shots were very different things at each end of the ice, where the Kraken, once again, like they did in Ottawa, were having a very hard time getting the puck towards the net or into any dangerous areas to actually get their shots off from, usually just settling for shots from the outside. Meanwhile, the Canadiens were taking advantage of some Kraken miscues in their defensive end, and a few minutes into the first, it's one of those defensive miscues in the Kraken end of the ice that cost them the 1-0 lead for Montreal. And it's the pairing pretty much of just Alexiak and Dunn that makes it happen, as Alexiak, who really has been fantastic defensively for the most part for the Kraken this season. I've said it a couple of times, he's been one of the better defensive defensemen for the Kraken this season. It's him and Larson certainly 1 and 2 on the team. But on this play, Alexiak just kind of carelessly throws the puck up into open ice in the defensive end from down in the corner where he was being guarded by a Canadiens player, so I'm sure he didn't get everything on this, I don't know, attempted clear that he wanted to. Either way, I don't even know if this puck would have made it to the blue line had there not been a Canadiens player to pick it up right in that open ice out by the faceoff dot. And he just throws one pass out to the far side to a wide open Monahan, who buries it into the back of the net. There's absolutely nothing Grubauer can do about it. And as far as how Monahan got that wide open on the back door, that's because Borgen, who was on him, decided to take a much wider kind of lazy curl out towards the boards while Monahan went right to the side of the net. So instead of Borgen being there to try to break up this pass or prevent the shot from going in, Monahan's there with no contest whatsoever and puts the Canadiens up 1-0. Unfortunately, the Kraken really didn't use this first goal as any kind of learning experience or wake-up call to stop playing the way they were in their defensive end, as they continue to have terrible defensive miscues and turning over the puck right in front of their net to Canadiens players. Beniers nearly hands another goal to the Habs here in the first period. Fortunately, Grubauer comes up with a couple of pretty spectacular saves. I mean, Not necessarily anything that's going to show up on end of the season highlight reels, but some very nice saves nonetheless, and certainly not ones that you'd like to see your goaltender making that frequently, that early in the game. Still, fortunately, the Kraken are able to survive the rest of this first period and get to the first intermission down just 1-0. Unfortunately, though, that 1-0 deficit would not last that long into the second period, as just a couple minutes into this second period, Montreal scores once again, and this one isn't so much a defensive miscue as it is just the Canadiens playing better by the Kraken net than they are. It's a shot on goal that is tipped pretty nicely. I think it was by Gallagher out in front of Grubauer. It's tipped on net as the shot was going wide. Grubauer makes the save thanks to being positioned well in the net, but it goes off of him right out into the crease, or right to the top of the crease, where of course there's a Canadiens player there to pick up the rebound and no Kraken player to really challenge him. He puts it into the back of the net and it's 2-0 Habs. Now, unfortunately, being down 2-0 is something the Kraken have kind of gotten used to here over the last couple of weeks, as like I said, they've been down 2-0 in each of their last 5 games, but in each of those scenarios, they were able to score the next goal. However, that doesn't happen this time, as a couple minutes later, the Habs get a power play and they score on it. It's a nice passing play, tic-tac-toe, just one-touch passes, something the Kraken could probably get to doing themselves on the power play, but the Habs make it work, and somehow Monahan gets another shot off from the slot as the finisher on this passing play. Even with 3 Kraken players around them, none of them are able to lift his stick or prevent him from getting the shot off. He gets it off. It doesn't leave Grubauer with really that much of a chance as long as the shot is placed well, which it is. It's into the back of the net, and it's 3-0 Montreal. So it is at this point, and honestly it remains true a few minutes after this as we hit that 30-minute mark, that even though the Kraken are right around the same place as the Habs are when it comes to shots on goal, both teams kind of in the mid to high teens, 15 to 17 shots on goal each at this point, the Habs have definitely gotten the better as far as quality opportunities are concerned, and while the quantity has been there for the Kraken, again, it feels a lot like that game against the Senators where everything is to the outside, and that might as well be a vanity number for the Kraken, as they really have not gotten that close to scoring on any of those shots. Fortunately, once we get into the back half of this game, the Kraken finally start putting in some effort and creating some actual dangerous chances, and eventually one of them goes in as Jared McCann gets loose out up in the high slot. He just wheels around with the puck, gets himself a little bit of space, looks at the net, picks a spot, takes his shot, and roofs it into the back of it to get the Kraken their first goal in 4.5 periods of play against teams towards the bottom of the Atlantic Division. McCann is once again and still team leading 12th goal of the season, as it's becoming clear that he has no interest in giving up that title as the Kraken leading goal scorer, which, especially with the Schwartz injury, unfortunately, it will be much easier for him to get there if he continues the pace that he's at. Plus, once again, as far as looking to the future is concerned, this is one of the guys that will be a part of that core, you'd have to think, in a few years' time. And here he is, still scoring goals, which you definitely like to see. And for what it's worth with McCann, even though his contract still does have another 3 years on it, this is a guy, he's the one guy, in fact, that did sign his extension during that inaugural season, and pretty late on into the inaugural season as well, so he definitely wants to be here, considering he didn't know that the team was gonna be good right away the next season. I mean, he might have seen the pieces there, he said that he liked where the team was going, but nobody expected the season the Kraken had last year to happen, and he signed on to a team that at the time did not look like they were ready to win anytime soon. And following the McCann goal, the Kraken do continue to press to try to get themselves to within 1 throughout the rest of this second period, or at least continue to get consistent offensive zone time. They don't really create that many more dangerous looks, but they get a few more shots off on net, and by the end of 2, the shots on goal I think were tied at 20, but the Kraken are down 3-1. At the very least, though, they are able to carry that momentum that they built in the second half of the second period into the start of the third, and while they don't score right away, they do end up with a power play out of it. And on that power play, they do pull to within 1, as Vince Dunn winds up and fires off a shot from the high slot, or honestly even above the high slot. He was more up towards the blue line when he shoots this puck. It's an absolute laser that is saved, but it bounces out to Tolvanen, who gets it back up to Dunn. Dunn winds up and fires off another one, and this one does find the back of the net. Dunn puts the Kraken on the board on the power play and makes it 3-2. And again, there's another one of those guys scoring for the Kraken that is a part of this core going forward. Dunn just his 4th goal of the season, but he did also get an assist on the McCann goal for his 17th, so 21 points for him, which is not bad considering the trouble the Kraken have had getting the puck into the net to this point in the season. Now, the Kraken, following this Dunn goal, aren't really able to continue to maintain the momentum that they'd had going for them here over the last kind of 15 minutes of play between the 2 periods. But they do almost score again to tie things up as Tanev goes for a wraparound chance, and I don't know if it was the goaltender or one of the defensemen that pulls this puck off of the line, preventing Tanev from getting it in. He, on first look, thought he had gotten into the net. He certainly beat the toe of the Montreal goaltender, but it doesn't end up going in. I think it did get partially across the red line and into the white, but certainly not all the way. So that bid to tie up the game and complete the 3-goal comeback doesn't go in. Unfortunately, from there, the Habs do start to fight back and really start to turn momentum in their favor until eventually the Kraken can get the goaltender pulled, Grubauer pulled, and while they do get a couple of shots off with the 6-on-5 advantage, eventually with about 30 seconds left in the game, a shot that is honestly just a dump out of the zone from way down in the corner by a guy that had yet to score this season, finds its way all the way down the ice into the Kraken net to hit the empty netter, making it 4-2, and icing this game away for the Habs as the Kraken do fall in regulation once again. So once again with this game for the Kraken, it's certainly a first half of the game that you would like to forget, but they did at least try to fight back, and a couple of the guys that will be a part of this team going forward for at least the next few years, and probably years after that. I would imagine both guys probably sign extensions. I would kind of expect McCann to done. I guess we'll see, but both of them are with the team for a few more years and should be into the start of that core coming up, as both Shane Wright and Ryan Winterton, I would imagine, probably get some playing time next year, as well as Riker Evans. So we'll see with a couple more years of some guys coming up from the AHL and potential trades, free agent signings, especially with the cap going up this offseason, what this team looks like going into the future, and if those guys are going to be an important part of this core going forward as the Kraken look to open up that window in the next couple of seasons. Regardless of what the rest of this season looks like, though, it is good to see them playing well. Both McCann and Dunn with the goals. Dunn honestly had a pretty good game. Well, I say he had a good game. He at least had a good second half of the game, and he wasn't one of the main culprits when it came to mistakes that cost the Kraken in the first half. So a mediocre first half, or at least not a negative first half, and a good second half. As far as this game is concerned for the Kraken, was a good game for Vince Dunn. Oliver Bjorkstrand, I felt, actually was the one guy that seemed to be playing well throughout pretty much the entirety of this game. Other than that, I mean, McCann scores, and Grubauer really didn't do anything that I felt was egregious in this game. Honestly, Grubauer played pretty well in this game. He just got hung out to dry on a number of occasions by his team and even bailed them out on a few of them. So I suppose really, at least for me anyway, with this game, for the Kraken, it came more down to the defensive miscues they had, especially in that first period, but even a couple of not so well played sequences in their end of the ice that put them in that 3-0 hole, which is always going to be a hard one to dig out of, regardless of how well you play the rest of the game, and they almost did dig their way out of it. Unfortunately, it was just a little bit too little too late for the team, and it didn't help as well that they really couldn't get anything going offensively, at least dangerously anyway, in that first half while they were making those defensive miscues. But at least they showed that fight back, which we didn't see in Ottawa. Anyway, finally here, and I appreciate if you've stuck with me all the way to this point of the video. Obviously not a particularly fun game to be a Kraken fan for one thing, and I know this has been a little bit more of an unorthodox R&R, certainly one that I had to kind of talk through my thoughts in, and we did go on a couple of different meandering trains of thought or different thought processes over the course of especially the first half of the video. So yeah, appreciate it if you've stuck around to this point, but as always, we finish with the Kraken 3 stars in this one, brought to you by the patrons over on Patreon. And again, this is not one that I'm sure we're going to get 3 stars, even with the changed expectations, but I do feel pretty good about having Vince Dunn as the first star. Again, yeah, the first half of the game might not have been there for him, but it wasn't there for pretty much anyone. He didn't make any major mistakes, and he did, or was, a major part of the Kraken fight back in the back half of the second and start of the third, with a goal and an assist, so 2 points on the game. Other than that, McCann gets a goal. Goals are fun, so I'll give him a star, and I will give one to Bjorkstrand because I felt like he played well. Even if he doesn't get on the score sheet, he was kind of the one Kraken player that I did notice making a positive impact really throughout the course of this entire game. And you know what? I suppose I'll throw an honorable mention to Grubauer as well, especially considering even if his stats don't look fantastic in this game, they don't look that terrible either, but especially considering the positions he was put in by his team in his end of the ice, especially in that first period, I think he's worthy of getting a shout out in this one with some of the saves that he was forced to make. Other than that, though, I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comment section below, where you're at with this season. Are you ready to shift our train of thought with expectations this season, or are you still all in on the Kraken potentially going on another 8-game win streak like they did last year and find their way back into the playoff hunt? It's not mathematically impossible, but at least for me, I haven't seen anything consistently, at least from this team, to believe that it's going to happen. So that just means we have to find other ways to enjoy watching this team, and I still do enjoy watching them every game. Hockey is just an incredible sport, and even if the team doesn't always play well, or even if they play poorly more often than well, it's at least fun to watch a team that plays in our city. I don't know, call it coping, call it whatever you want, but that's at least where I'm at with this team right now. Obviously, I'm still kind of figuring it out, as you saw over the course of this video and the trains of thought that we went on. But either way, if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy the video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below that will support the channel. And until next time, as always, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken.